Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. A standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page. As usual, my name is John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. I'll hand it off to Robert Johnson in the mobile Masonic van.
It's a Jeep. It's not a van. So, yeah, I'm mobile again. I'm almost home, though, so I was at a Royal Arch meeting. Anyway, Robert Johnson, past master of Waukegan Lodge, current secretary, and host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast. Thanks, John.
See, if it makes you feel any better, I'm actually thinking in my head like the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo. So
yeah,
like
no,
the Masonic
that's
Mystery
cool.
Machine. That's it. That's what it's going to be from now on.
I can dig it. I mean, I have all the gadgets like chargers and laptops. So, you know.
Well, like Scoob.
Ruby. Nick Johnson.
I would have gotten away with getting rid of T.O. had it not been for you meddling kids.
Oh, man. That was awesome. I love it. Nick Johnson, past master, Corinthian Lodge number 67, and a very, very exhausted recorder of some York Rite bodies. Don't become a recorder. It's dumb.
Jaded as well.
Those the things? Are those the things we had to play like during fourth grade?
The recorder.
Yeah, hot cross buns.
Nick always got played. Juan Sepulveda, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast and a brother of Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in Kissimmee, Florida.
Great. Thank you, Juan. And Jason Richards.
Good evening, everybody. Jason Richards, Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia, here with you tonight.
For only a couple more weeks.
Yeah. That's so our current worshipful master, Jim Love, is actually counting down the days. So each time he sees me, he's like, man, 23 more. Like, that's if you don't get reelected.
That's right. You know how elections are lately. They have major upturns.
So and again, I say if anyone wants... If anyone in Acacia wants to not elect me as worshipful master, my wife will be overjoyed.
There's still a chance. So you're saying there's a chance.
You sealed your fate. That's really what's happened now. Tried to have family come first.
All right, let's get into our sponsor this week. As usual, our sponsor for this episode is brought to you by Edgar Alejandro of MasonicRevival.com. Now, I was trying to think before the show of which of us have actually met Edgar in person. And then I thought, well, we did actually see him in person at the March Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge. But since then, I know that I've run into him at a couple events in D.C. when we had our Mid-Atlantic Convocation of Academic Lodges. I know he's been at a couple Grand Lodge events. RJ, you've run into him over there, right?
Yes, sir. It was a great time.
So he gets around. He is a traveling man in all senses of the word. But if you haven't met him, definitely go to some of the events he's going to be at. He doesn't hit all the Grand Lodge events, but he goes to the ones that he can. So check out his table if you're there. Virginia just had their Grand Lodge session. Of course, he was not there. This
he's going to try to hit Virginia next year.
Next year, yeah. I did hit him up in October, and he said it just the timing didn't work out. But anyway, it's even better to see his stuff laid out on a table. The website is great. The website, MasonicRevival.com, is great. But there's nothing like seeing, touching, because you really don't know what you're getting. And I can tell you the quality is amazing. When I did get his Memento Mori tie with the little skull and crossbones, and just you can count every single tooth in the skull, and it's just fantastic. So if you like that kind of stuff, go over to MasonicRevival.com and check out their newest neckties, aprons, accessories, and Of course, use promo code TMR for free shipping. Isn't it about time for a Masonic revival?
Yes, it is, John. And one more quick thing. One of the things that that I think is kind of underrated as far as what Edgar does is he does his own lapel pins as well, to the point where he is actually doing my lapel pins for my year in the East. So I'm very excited. I'm probably going to have them in early January or early February, but they will be absolutely awesome. So check out his website as well, and also go take a look at his stuff on Amazon. You might find a couple surprises there.
Be as cool as Jason. Get your pins done by Edgar. Let's move into Masonic news for this week. And Robert just disappeared. We were going to hit him up about some recent events going on in Illinois. But there he is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Just getting ready to walk in the house. So anyway, Masonic news in Illinois, we due to some liability concerns, we actually were one of the few states who still had a Masonic children's home. We had 2 of them, and we ended up deciding that they are going to be closing probably by June of next year. And like I said, it all stems back for 2 liability reasons. We've got several kids, living in the houses. I'm sure they have, resident assistants and things of that nature, but it just is really difficult to try to mitigate any situations that could arise legally from all that. So they decided to take them down. Not take them down. That sounds bad. They decided to just close them.
Mm-hmm.
With extreme prejudice.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so.
No,
I think they do have the kids' best interest at the heart of it all. We're hoping that because it's already outfitted to be a children's home, my hope is that maybe the state takes it over, or another agency takes it over, another charity can take it over, something that isn't perhaps Masonically related. Because there are people who work there too. I think it'd be a bummer for those people to lose their jobs if you're giving so much for those kids.
Yeah. I mean, Virginia.
It wasn't because like Miss Hannigan was running it or anything like that. So, right. Wow, did I just drop an Annie reference?
Oh.
That is the nerdiest, lamest thing I've ever done.
And you know what? Annie is a comic book, so that does qualify as Nick reference material.
This is true. And what the heck is up with Daddy Warbucks? Seriously, that guy.
It's a hard knock life for Nick.
This is true, but I do have my bookshelf, so that's really all that matters at this point.
And the HD glow.
I was driving through North Carolina this weekend and actually saw a turnoff point for the children's home there. So there are a few children's homes left. In Virginia, our Masonic home, as it's now currently known, started out as a home for widows and orphans, and then over time turned basically into a retirement community for widows and brothers. And so I think there's still about 250 guests of the Masonic home that live there full time, but no longer are there any widows or orphans specifically.
Well, and honestly, with social services being as they are, and government being involved heavily in that field at this point, it makes sense that I think the cost benefits just don't make it up that way. And it's kind of interesting though. I think the Shrine in Minneapolis isn't doing the circus anymore either, and I'm not sure. I didn't really read into it, but it's kind of interesting to just see kind of the walking away of these things that for probably, if you said this to the generation that's now been passing away, that we're getting rid of these things, they probably would have been up in arms. But I can see why we are extricating ourselves from things that we don't really need to be involved in anymore. So
right, at different time.
So the Shrine is canceling the circus. I thought the Shrine getting rid of the clown units was satire.
Send in the clowns, man. Send in the clowns.
Art.
Just kidding. I hate clowns. Chlorophobia is real.
Good old chloroform. All right, Jason, what are we doing December 3rd?
Hey, December 3rd, I'd love for you guys to come and support the officers of Acacia Lodge as we install our 2017 slate of officers, with me being the presumptive worshipful master. So I think I had a meeting with the district deputy and all the other incoming masters tonight, so I think that is more or less set in stone at this point. So see you all out there. Got a couple of brethren who are coming as far away as New York, Ohio, and perhaps even Massachusetts. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have a big old sleepover at my place the night before. So let me know if you're interested in coming. And if nothing else, we're going to be John and I are going to be streaming it live the morning of. So there is a Facebook event on our TMR Facebook page. So check it out. It's got the link to the YouTube stream there, and it'll kick off Saturday, December 3rd at 10 o'clock. We're going to have a reception afterward at the lodge. I'll give anyone who wants one a tour of the lodge building, and it'll be a lot of fun. So hope to see you there.
Good. It's coming up soon. So good luck, Jason.
Yes. Don't remind my wife.
Just remember, it's only a year. It's going to fly by. Let's see. For the last piece of Masonic news, this comes from our friend and brother, Paul Chamberlain, who was the worshipful brother during, I guess, my year, 2013, for a late Veterans Day recognition. So thank you for all those brothers and friends who have served. Paul wanted to mention that in 2008, Brother Stephen A. Gardner, the Right Worshipful Grandmaster in Pennsylvania, the Grandmaster, started a initiative called Change for Troops. And the goal was simple. After every meeting, brothers would empty their pockets of change into a container. The money would then be forwarded onto the Grand Lodge, who would purchase calling cards for our troops overseas. What made this program so special was that every single penny placed in a collection bin went to those cards. The Grand Lodge did all the administrative work without taking any money from the funds. As time went on, and the program continued to exceed expectations, the decision was made to expand the program and change the name of the program to Help Our Heroes. So the Grand Lodge went so much further than calling cards and shifted its focus even to include baby showers. This was really neat. The baby showers were amazing. They would invite several pregnant service women or servicemen or their spouses to a baby shower where they would receive beautiful baskets filled with necessities and be entered in for a raffle for the grand prize of a new travel system and other items, like a generous gift card from Babies R Us, that kind of thing. The best part was that the highlight of these showers is always when they reveal that everyone won the grand prize and all the families there present will be receiving the whole package. So that was kind of a really, really nice surprise and a nice repeatable system that they had. Because the Grand Lodge does all the administrative tasks, the $1 million raised so far, yes, $1 million, has gone directly to $1 million worth of donations to our veterans. And so Paul concludes, that's why I'm proud of what my Grand Lodge has done, and it has continued on to this day. So back from 2008 to today, this program's going strong, and all it just takes is emptying some change. So something for your lodge or your Grand Lodge to repeat, but that's a good news story and something that helps out our Masonic veterans. Great. With that, I think it's time to switch over to Nick Johnson and his little trivia show he has called the Masonic Monday Question.
On Tuesday.
Whoa, what was going on there? It was like Satan and God were fighting in one voice. It was insane. Oh man, there he is again. I am now actually frightened. So last week's question was this
Tuesday.
famous Freemason. A Tuesday, whenever it was, sometime in the past. Jason Richards answered it first, so he gets first. Jason Wise, Mike Hambrecht, Richard Num, Ed Potter, Lieber Longhurst, Joey Boyer, C. Douglas Russell, Willem Kosen, and Christopher Croto, you all answered correctly, which was Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda, who was initiated, passed, and raised in Anchor and Hope Lodge number 1 in India. It had another number before when it was under the English Constitution, but I don't really want to look it up. So, good job, guys. You did a great job. So, we're going to go into the Masonic Monday question for the week of November 14th, 2016, which was, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is one of the most famous 33-degree systems in the world. Even profanes know of the 33rd degree. However, it isn't the only one. This Masonic body, founded in England sometime in the 1770s, consisted of 33 degrees. It was first constituted in the United States in the state of Rhode Island in 1829. It fell into disuse and disappeared for more than a century, until it was legitimized by the Grand Council of Allied Masonic Degrees in England and Wales and the colonies and dependencies of the British Crown. Currently, in its current form, only one degree is conferred. Name that Masonic body. And a bonus, list the titles of the 33 degrees within this degree system. And bonus number 2, are all 33 degrees actually practiced? When you have your answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, lodge number, and the hashtag I love life memberships. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Nick. I'm sure you do.
Oh man, secretaries love life memberships. Cut the check. You don't have to cut a check. Boom. Anyway.
Good stuff. All right, let's get to this week's topic, which is the historical King Solomon's Temple. For those who are Masons, they'll hear a little bit about King Solomon's Temple as they go through the degree system. And for those who are not Masons, then we're not spoiling anything, because you can pick up any favorite book of the Bible or favorite translation of the Bible and specifically turn to the section of First Kings and Second Chronicles, where you can read a detailed account of King Solomon and how he built his temple, which is really interesting because when you try to think about how core and essential it is into our degree system, then we have to kind of go back to the source and figure out the literal interpretation of the account of the temple, kind of where it is, what's written, vice what's historically accurate, based on historical evidence, and then kind of go from there to figure out what is the allegorical relevance of King Solomon's Temple. So one thing I wanted to start with was really the basics. If you look at First Kings, they describe the dimensions in cubits, and so looking at a biblical cubit is about 18 inches. So for rough estimate, if you want to convert cubits to feet, it's 18 times however many cubits divided by 12 inches, and you got that many feet.
Now, technically, John, cubit historically has varied because cubit was actually the length of the elbow to the top of the middle finger of the king.
We all know kings had exactly the same size arms, so exactly 18 inches. Right. So I mean, there's discrepancy number one of trying to figure out what the actual dimensions were.
So we need to exhume Solomon to get accurate measurements.
Right. If we
21 inches seems to be another number that comes up, right?
Correct. Right. So I'm going on the standard of Wikipedia, who says the biblical cubit was 18 inches. So if we roll with that, because we could talk for an hour about the definition of a cubit.
Roger Firestone would know the definition.
Yes, the exact version. 18 inches would translate into the dimensions of King Solomon's temple to 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 inches high, or 45 feet high, not inches, 45 feet high, 90 by 30 by 45. Initially, my gut says that something doesn't add up right, because it is padded with glory and splendor in the retelling of King Solomon's temple. And then what do we see here? Robert's got a picture. Look at this thing. This thing's humongous. Robert, tell us more about this picture you're holding up.
Sorry about that, the old mic. So this is a postcard, King Solomon's Temple. This is actually an exhibit at the Century of Progress near the planetarium. This was from the Chicago World's Fair. And it's pretty neat, right? There's like really 3 versions of King Solomon's Temple. This one in particular is one of the more rare depictions because it has that tower. That tower in the background is not in all of the descriptions. Most of the descriptions don't actually use it. And what you're left with is it's either this or it's this giant, magnificent building that we see depicted everywhere, or as you guys alluded to, this smaller building that would. I've heard 2 descriptions. One says it would fit in the size of a basketball court or in the size of 2 modern-day basketball courts. But to be sure, like we have to also recognize that the temple itself was just the temple, and all of these walls around it, right? I mean, these are these courtyards that expand
That's a good graphic, Juan.
There you go. Yeah. So in Juan's graphic that he's got up, there is gateways around it. In fact, what's pretty cool is it should be noted too that on here he's got Solomon's temple, and then of course there's Ezekiel's and Herod's temple. So you can see the different versions of the actual temple, the different times it was built.
And on this graphic, they did make an executive decision and figured out the measurement just for illustration's sake. So the Solomon's Temple here doesn't have the measurement written, but we have 90 by 30 by 45.
Yeah,
correct.
So one of the things, we have the second temple. I know we're talking probably about the first temple, really. I mean, we can talk about them all, I guess, but there is a couple websites, and I've put up a link before, and I think we can probably put it in the show notes. And that is a live, kind of an OpenGL platform where you can do a walkthrough of Solomon's Temple virtually, as it existed through biblical texts, I guess it would be. And it's even downloadable on your smartphone. There's different wonders of the world that you can walk through on your smartphone, but one of them is the temple, and I think it's free to download.
So knowing that, I'd heard you bring it up on once came you before about the dimensions of King Solomon's temple, knowing you were going to throw in the basketball court reference, I did look ahead and figure out what is the standard regulation size, at least in the American NBA system. Again, we talked about King Solomon's temple being about 90 feet long by 30 feet wide by 45 feet high. In NBA, the court is 94 feet by 50 feet.
So it would fit inside.
It would fit inside. It would be smaller than an NBA court.
Yeah. But then, right, I mean, one of the really interesting concepts, though, and I'm pretty learned in biblical things, but you guys being more practicing of the religion probably can add some real interesting points to this. Is when the Jews were traveling through the desert, every night they set up the temple and broke it down, and it was a desert tabernacle. And when they built the actual building, correct me if I'm wrong, it mimicked the same size as the one that they were using in the desert. So it couldn't be too huge.
Well, and then at that time too, I mean, and this is me trying to remember on my Bible, but at that time David had set up a tabernacle within Jerusalem, which was a very, he was trying to unite the various tribes because at that time there was infighting. They were trying to unify the kingdom itself, and so he actually took the Ark of the Covenant itself out of, well, it wasn't in storage, but it was kind of in storage for 60 years. He took it out, brought it to Jerusalem, and placed it in there. But, and the Bible describes that because of the war and bloodshed, he was unable to build the temple himself and had to wait until his son took that over. And what really is fascinating, though, when you read through the biblical text on that point, is that the writer of First Kings is very ambivalent to the whole point of him building the temple. I think there's just essentially one line that says, and he wanted to build it and it was good, or something like that. And that was it. And so, it was, most of the First Kings is more focused on, him having marriages outside of the community, or him, making pledges with people outside of the community, or forcing people into labor that were in the northern part of the kingdom. But he didn't actually, and so it's kind of interesting to read, when within our particular fraternity, we focus very dedicatedly to, this great, magnificent building that was created. But within the Bible itself, there's kind of a, if you go between Chronicles and Kings, they're kind of, not exactly sure what the importance of the building is. So it's just kind of fascinating to see how much extra content we build into the structure
I think
itself.
there's something. I think there might be something to that, and part of, and I'll talk about this, right, because it's not part of my obligation here. They give specific numbers of how many people were employed to build the temple, and there's so many, and you just think you don't need that many people to build a temple that's really that small.
Let's talk about that. You can actually find the numbers of the laborers in 1 Kings 5, verse 15 and 16, where he had 70,000 that bear burdens, and 80. I'm reading the King James Version, so bear with me. 80,000 hewers in the mountains, beside the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300, which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. Meaning, in English, 153,000 people to build a basketball court.
I'm calling shenanigans. I think that's totally allegorical for something else.
Right. That's exactly where I was going to go.
They couldn't all fit inside the basketball court, at least very well.
So here's an interesting fact. Doing some research for the show, if you look at a comparison building thing, and we can estimate that King Solomon's temple was built probably around the 10th century BCE, around 950 BCE. The Greek historian Herodotus claimed that in 500 BC, that 100,000 people built the pyramids, the Great Pyramids in Egypt. However, modern Egyptologists, they've kind of reverse engineered how many people it would take to quarry the stone and move the stone, and they believe the figure to actually be more along the lines of like 20,000 to 30,000.
Yeah, so modern Egyptology says 20 to 30,000 people over 20 years, placing a brick every 1.5 seconds or something like that, which bricks that are 5 to 10 tons. Don't get me started that we can't even do that today.
So we're talking about something that's
we just don't whip hard enough, that's all.
We have 2 cranes in the whole world that can do that, Nick, and it takes weeks to move one thing.
I'm not saying
it's aliens.
I'm not saying it's aliens.
But it's aliens.
So while we're on the subject of the allegorical aspect of the building of King Solomon's temple, can we talk a little bit about the numerology? because I find it very interesting that, according to biblical accounts, Solomon's temple was built in just over 7 years. 7 numerologically being the number most associated with perfection in the Bible.
And completion, which makes
And
sense.
completion.
Building,
Yes.
you're building to completion on 7 years.
Creation in 7 days, building of the temple in 7 years. The dove returning, the dove returning back to Noah in 7 days. Sensing a theme here.
How many known planets were there then?
Pluto's not a planet.
They couldn't see it anyway.
Thanks, Tyson.
Yeah, man, ruins everything.
When is the year that you said that the temple approximately was completed?
Around 950 BCE. I mean, depending on, but just split the difference and say the mid 900s BCE.
And because one thing that we have to take into account is when do we think that the Book of Kings was written? Like, to me, that's a factor that's very important. Because if there's more than 6 months in between the building and the documenting thereof, there will be discrepancies.
So look, so then there's oral tradition that goes with that. And if you're telling a story about how great the house of God is, you might stretch the story a little bit. Over time, even unintentionally, you play the game of telephone long enough, and before it gets written down, to your point, Juan, the fish might go from this big to, and over time, it can be inflated.
And so, to at least give a projected answer to your question, Juan, the Book of Kings, that together with Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel belong to the Deuteronomic history, were supposed to be written during the Babylonian exile, is something you're very familiar with if you're a Royal Archmason, somewhere around 550 BCE.
It's about 400, almost 500 years later.
So you got 450 or so years of oral tradition and molding and fudging and whatnot.
Yeah, and all you have to do is think about. I'm sure this has happened to you, where you read an article. Let's say, for example, it says that the average American throws away $1,500 in produce. Throws them out every year. And by that night, you're telling the story to a friend. He's like, "Oh my God, it was like $15,000." I mean, I don't remember if it was 1,500 or 15,000, but it was a lot. And the conversation usually ends in that. It was between this and that, and that happens in the lapse of one day. The importance, like you say, we definitely we're pressed to just look at it as a representation of the grandeur of the manpower. Not necessarily, we can't go in there and say, I caught you. It never existed, because it was impossible. We have to rely on it being just a number to make an impression on people on the scope of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the thing, is everything biblical. I know, as somebody who considers himself a Lutheran, you're supposed to the Bible is kind of the cradle of everything, right? But I still think that there's more symbolism in it than a lot of people that want it to be this inerrant document want it to be. And that's the thing, is when you're describing, how this was built and how many people were involved and all this stuff, to be honest, I don't know if that even matters. And I was chatting with my pastor, and they were discussing when Joshua crosses into Egypt, and all of a sudden, bajillions of horses died, right? It's not about the number. It's about the thought of the number, right? So that's kind of the point. And so the thing is, with the building of King Solomon's temple, we get into the next part, which is that Hiram, king of Tyre, who was a Phoenician, sent workmen and monies and things like that. And the thing is, what it kind of describes is that Solomon himself was a cosmopolitan king, which was very different than what it was before. And obviously, because he's marrying outside of of his own society that kind of shows what it is. But it's kind of this broadening and this acceptance that Israel and Judah are entering into a new era, and it's this opening up of that country to foreign powers and foreign thoughts and foreign everything. And that I think that makes perfect sense within a Masonic context, that we ourselves, when you enter into this representation of Solomon's temple, it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter where you're from, and that's kind of the point. And so when you take this idea, and I don't know if we describe it or discuss it, that King of Tyre is in a lot of Masonic thought. I think his purpose there is to give us this opening of what are we as Masons. We are a cosmopolitan society that is open to everyone, and I think that's an absolutely essential idea within Masonry, because the purpose of Masonry, at least to Dr. Anderson, is that it is a way of closing the gap between us and everyone else in our community, just as King Solomon's Temple did within that community.
So what would you say about provincial Masons who never travel outside their lodge?
I would like take their dues card, and I'd say, if you want it, you got to come with me, and then just watch.
Love it.
And I love that you said that, especially in light of what's happening in our country right now. You have all this divisiveness that comes out of the politics. It comes out of this the racial tension and all of that. And I think we need so much of that mentality that says we need to meet, basically on the level. We need to recognize that we're just all part of one family. We're just, one race, the human race. And when it comes to politics, we're just one country. We have to come together as patriots and try to do our very best to make sure that our country moves forward and not backwards. So I hope that brothers take that symbology and take it to heart. We're gonna find people that voted differently than we did, and we might feel yucky about it, but it shouldn't matter. We're still brothers, we're still humans, and we're still Americans. So
I don't know. I don't want to get off, and this is a whole nother topic, for another day probably, but there are some brothers out there that I really think could use that message, because I know a handful of brothers who have sworn to me that they will never go to another lodge again because they just can't pledge allegiance anymore. Isn't that? I mean, it's strong. I mean, it's bad. So, I mean, I really hope people take that to heart, what Juan was saying there.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have another fun fact about the biblical account. Well, I guess it's really now historical, because we really don't have any historical evidence, meaning tangible evidence that King Solomon's Temple even existed. But that
Thanks, Romans.
The oral tradition does say that it was
actually
built,
it's Babylonian. Sorry.
Yes, at Jerusalem, and so and supposedly at the site of the Dome of the Rock, which, due to all the overlapping religious activity going on, that really excavation and trying to find relics is kind of prohibited, and a very sensitive topic, obviously, because we have overlapping religions on central points in the earth. But if it were in the exact location as the Dome of the Rock, then what's interesting, I found as a Mason, that it would be north of the Tropic of Cancer. And in the account in the Bible, it did have windows, but given its orientation, east and west, no light, whether from the sun or the moon, would have been able to enter in through the north side of the lodge. Found that to be an interesting Masonic reference there, that the north as a place of darkness. So
that's allegorical.
It's allegorical, and I'm sure you'll fill us in later.
There's a secret doctrine about that.
There you go.
And I think that's kind of the thing is, we do, and I think I've mentioned this before, the allegorical aspect of King Solomon's temple, we get very confused by it, because if you are reading through First Kings, it's this is this exact height, or this is this size, this is how it's built. And people who look at things in a literal sense are going, oh, well, this is exactly what it looked like. And that's the thing. It's literally a map, or a plan that's put on paper saying this is how big it is. And I think it confuses people. It confuses people because they go, well, this is literally here. And it's like, guys, come on. Think broader. Think outside of your comfort zone. Think that they're saying this is grand, not that this is 60 cubits high and 45, and you're supposed to build it right now, Sam. Come on, get out there. It's like, no, get broader.
Just in case you're wondering, there's over 35 references of dragons in the King James Version of the Bible. So those translations have been improved over time. There were not actual dragons amongst the earth going on at that point.
You serious, Clark?
Maybe or maybe not.
Have you seen Game of Thrones? Seriously, I'm just saying.
That is
You are wrong, sir, and I will not accept that. Well, and the other aspect I really find fascinating, and luckily because we're Masons and we have a 3-degree system, we are very fortunate to get to see it in its entirety. Is that the King Solomon Temple is built on this concentric circle idea. So you're outside on the porch, then you get into the inner sanctuary, and then you finally enter the Holy of Holies, right? And it very much resembles what we as Masons are thinking as well. We're not exactly becoming, Kohen Gadol's. We're not high priests going in, but it's a beautiful symbolism that we are fortunate to have. That you're entering the porch, then you're in the inner sanctuary, getting to the middle chamber, and then you finally get to the end.
Don't forget the pillars.
And there's pillars and things.
This assumes you paid the price. You're not a Gentile.
That's true.
You got to be the right kind of fella to get through all these porches before you can get up there, and
you got to burn the right things. Correct.
Yeah. Actually, not as much during Herod's time. Actually,
Herod's time was the worst.
I don't know. It sounded fun to me. I'm just saying.
All right, we could
go
go
lunch after. Okay, fine.
About this, so let's go to social media because there's a couple good questions that have popped up already. This might be
so let's
2 or 3-parter.
So let's start with Brother Mike Hambrecht, our faithful TMR intern, who's asking, how about the allegorical representation of the human body as King Solomon's temple?
Yes, the answer is yes. So,
I'm looking at Robert Johnson to help answer that.
Yeah, sure. That's what it is. Plain and simple. We're not saying, I'm not going to say all of it. Personally, I believe, that's what it is literally throughout all things. It leads to something else that you'll discover as a Mason as you go along. But, on the very surface level, we talk about we're building good men, right? We're making them better. We talk about these working tools, and we're working on the human mind by divesting our hearts and consciousness. I can never say the word consciences of the vices and superfluities of life. So automatically, you should be making that correlation just on that surface level. You want to take it deeper. Great book that I don't have up here. I'll give you show notes later, but it's a good book. Trust me.
I'm sure it's great. But that gets to another point too, where it's discussed in 1 Kings 6, verse 7. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was building. So it's constructed over 7 years. No sound of hammer or axe or iron. Also, that it's supposed that it didn't rain during the daytime so that the laborers could work. You could call it divine providence, or you could say, is it more of an internal structure, right? Is it more of a soft, squishy?
Hell yeah.
Right?
Or even perhaps a romanticization
Right.
of the story, right? To
Totally
give further credence to the solemnity and the holiness of that endeavor.
Next question.
Next question. All right. Mike also says, remember that many of the workers weren't anywhere near the temple, and that is true. So let's see. Brother Gary Misner mentions one of his past masters presented a discussion of the cubit, measured from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. Of course, he created a stir when he had several members come to the south and extend their middle finger so that he could measure them and discuss the differing lengths of cubits at different cultures at the time. So that was kind of awesome. Yes.
That's pretty creative. I like that. Kudos.
Nice job.
So let's see. Brother Byron Weber mentions that he finds it difficult to believe that the temple was only the size described in the Bible. You would think that there was a significant wall and courtyard system that accounted for the large number of laborers. And Mike Hombrecht and Brother Blake Miles Leach also mentioned similar things, like, perhaps the temple was simply just the sanctum, and if RJ, in he held up, there were at least 4 separate walls that just expanded out the complex that perhaps wasn't accounted for.
Yeah, that's totally valid, and I have no argument against that, because I would firmly believe that's completely probable. Although these ancient buildings, these ancient sites, there is a lot of study that needs to be done into the way it was done.
And the problem here is, like, we have nothing to study.
Yep.
Like, if it were that we have some ruins that we could go and look around, there's not much that we can do. But another thing that I wanted brothers to keep in mind too is you have the concentric walls, you have all these levels, right? But you also think that it's not just the people that are cutting and putting. There are a lot of steps into putting together a building like this. One of the things that comes to mind that I haven't heard mentioned is there are people that their sole job is to sharpen tools, to just sharpen the tools. If you think of the construction of the pyramids of Giza, they have found some artifacts that kind of allude to the fact that you had some dedicated workmanship, just constantly reshaping and retooling the tools that are going dull, that are breaking, that are bending.
Even if you didn't have any tools of iron?
Well, the tools of iron were not used on site.
On site, yes, correct.
Yeah, but they weren't using like coconut leaves or any other stuff. They were using the tools.
That would take a long time to cut.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, wait, here's my shiv. I'm ready to build the temple. Yeah.
This
No
is taking
takes
a
7
long
years.
That's a pretty sweet shiv.
That's about all we've got, John.
Okay, good stuff. It's that time to start wrapping up. So let's start with Juan Sepulveda.
All right, brothers. Please pardon my absence. Recently, I had some family and some issues, but I'm excited to be back and learn a little bit more alongside you. I thank everybody for listening and contributing. This is half the fun if you're not there. So thank you for making comments, asking questions. It keeps us on our toes and helps us find the correct information. Like I said, if you have any questions, put them on the social media page. Go to facebook.com or fb.com / is it the Masonic Roundtable? Yeah, it's Twitter that has the table. Yeah, that throws me off. And I will be one day having more episodes of The Winding Stairs. I cannot make any promises. I hate not putting it out, but it'll come. I haven't given up. Don't worry.
Quality over quantity.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, brothers. TheWindingStairs.com.
Take you on. Nick Johnson.
Sure. Yes, you are absolutely right. Quality over quantity, which is why I only blog once in a while. I like every 3 months or so. And it's usually pictures because I love pictures. Pictures are the best. The thing is about King Solomon's Temple is, and I know we didn't really hit the symbolic as much as we probably all wanted to, but it's a representation of not just us as people, it's us as community. When King Solomon's Temple was built, Solomon, Shlomo, dropped that edifice into the community. It changed it. It was no longer going to be a people, a wandering band of people. It was now staying put. It was in Jerusalem. It was there. It was going to serve as a beacon that, the name was now there. And that's the same thing with Freemasonry. We are a beacon within the community that we have to uphold the goodness within ourselves. And that's the thing. It's not just that we are the temple itself. We're also just a brick within it. And we have to, along with our brothers, fit together so that we can build the things around us and to serve as an example to everyone around us. And that's where I've always, I kind of tell this funny story, and this is one of those that, when you're trying to figure out symbolism within Freemasonry, it always gets confusing. So in my lodge, there's 2 holes in the back wall. Well, me as being a dummy, I don't know much, but I asked one of the past masters, and I said, "Are those 2 holes in the back wall? Are those like the missing blocks of King Solomon's Temple?" And Mike, one of the funniest guys I know, he goes, "What are you talking about? No, that's where the projector was." Oh. Oh, wow. And so, that's the thing, is like symbolism gets very confusing very quickly. So, it's really good that we focus on King Solomon's Temple and what it means to us. We also don't want to start, gravitating to Crazy Town. So with that, I think that's all I gotta say about that. MillennialFreemason.com. I did put up an article about how I was inducted into yet another thing. So thanks, guys, and have a great night.
Pay all the dues.
Pay all those dues. Tell me about it.
All the dues.
All the dues. Robert Johnson. That's you, Robert.
Oh, I didn't hear anybody say anything. Sorry. So Solomon's Temple, really cool allegory for everything. You guys kind of know my big thing is esoteric anatomy. So I equate a lot of that to Solomon's Temple, obviously, and some other things. If you guys like that kind of thing, we talk about it probably every other week or so. We have a guest on Fraternity, and we kind of nerd out on it and other esoteric topics. Speaking of Masonic Revival, at the top of the show, I came home today and I got this real sweet package in the mail. Yeah. So this is probably my new lapel pins, the WCY pins. We had them done through Edgar Alejandro also. And they're great. So we're going to check them out later. Look for an unboxing video, something like that, maybe later on. I did want to just mention I've got a couple events coming up in January 26th. I'm going to be speaking at the 8th Annual Festive Board at University Masonic Lodge, number 1190 AF and AM in Austin, Texas. It's going to be at the Austin Club at 7 p.m. I'll have some ticket info later for you guys, but it's really cool because all the money, the proceeds benefit the Austin Children's Shelter, the elementary schools. It's all charity related, so all the funds go toward that. The topic's going to be the word, myth, legend, and science, so it'll be cool. And then Masonicon 2017, which is April 29th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Ezekiel Bates Lodge in Attleboro, Massachusetts. It's a free event. There's going to be lectures, a lot of really cool stuff going on. There'll be a panel discussion and some great lecturers, including Paul Smith, Pierce Vaughn, Angel Millar, excuse me, Greg Kaminsky, Oscar Lean, and Richard Casero, along with myself. And we'll have a really good panel discussion, like I said, hopefully some surprises and announcements coming about that panel soon. If you like Masonic podcasts, please check out Whence Came You, which is on Sunday nights at 9:30. Thanks.
Coolio. Jason Richards.
All right, King Solomon's Temple. Really interesting discussion today. I love looking at the intersection of what we know from history and historical examination and the Masonic ritual. So this was a really, really fun topic. I don't have much as far as final thoughts are concerned. A couple things coming up for me. Again, installation on December 3rd. On Monday, January 2nd, I will be at Anacostia Lodge number 21 in DC speaking. I will probably be giving an expanded version of the Noahide origins to the Masonic third degree. It'll be interesting. So if you're in the area, feel free to come on out. And with that, that's about all I've got, John.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so as you know, we didn't have enough time tonight to cover all the aspects. We barely even talked about the porch that was outside of King Solomon's Temple, which has a lot of allegory and references in our degrees. But, you know, I think this is going to be the first of many parts. But I'll leave you with this. Trying to figure out the literal dimensions of King Solomon's Temple will kind of lead you nowhere because of the discrepancies of cubit length and the number of workers seems like way too many. But take a step back, as Nick was doing a great job in trying to look at the context of it all. If you look at, again, one of my favorite scientists and possibly Freemason, Sir Isaac Newton, he spent thousands of pages describing the details and the hidden meanings of King Solomon's Temple. He wrote a posthumous book, so it was a compilation of his notes and letters in a book called The Chronology of Ancient Kingdoms Amended, and he dedicated a whole chapter on the hidden meanings of the dimensions of King Solomon's Temple, where he literally translated back the original Hebrew. So he didn't take it on someone's word. He went back to the source and translated himself and was looking at things such as golden sections, conic sections, spirals, orthographic projection, the volume of hemispheres. He was trying to figure out all these ratios that were in the numerology in the book of Kings and Chronicles. So obviously there's something there to be explored. And I encourage you to start looking there as we probably pick up on the allegorical symbolism of King Solomon's Temple in a future episode. So with that, that's all I got. Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.